Betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the moon goddess destined for you. What happens when a powerful alpha rejects his fated peasant mate for a wealthy noblewoman? She doesn't just weep. She flees into the deadly frozen north, straight into the arms of the savage Winter King. In the sprawling, muddy village of Silverbridge, survival was earned through calloused hands and aching backs. Bronwyn knew this better than anyone. As the pack's lowest-ranking herbalist, her days were spent foraging in the damp briars, grinding yarrow, and tending to the wounds of the warriors who barely acknowledged her existence. She was an omega by circumstance, orphaned by rogue attacks, and left with nothing but her vast knowledge of the earth. Yet Bronwyn possessed a quiet, resilient beauty, a wild mane of chestnut hair and striking, amber eyes that held the stubborn fire of a survivor. The turning point of her life arrived beneath the heavy, blood-red glow of the harvest moon. It was the night of the mating hunt, a centuries-old tradition where wolves came of age and found their destined equals. Bronwyn had attended only to serve spiced mead to the nobles, keeping her head bowed as silk and armor brushed past her coarse woolen dress. Then the scent hit her. It was an intoxicating blend of rain-soaked pine, rich earth, and raw power. The wooden goblet slipped from her fingers, shattering on the cobblestones. When she looked up, her amber eyes locked with piercing, stormy grey ones. Roland. He was the alpha heir of Silverbridge, a warrior of unmatched prowess and legendary arrogance. He stood at the center of the courtyard, draped in a cloak of dire wolf fur, his jaw clenched as the undeniable ancient pull of the mate bond slammed into them both. The air grew thick. The chatter of the courtyard faded into a deafening silence as the pack realized what was happening. The moon goddess, in her infinite, cruel wisdom, had paired the future ruler of their lands with a dirt-stained peasant. For a fleeting second, Bronwyn felt a surge of euphoric hope. The legend said the bond conquered all, erasing class and wealth. But as she took a trembling step forward, the storm in Roland's eyes shifted from shock to deep, unadulterated disgust. He did not close the distance. He turned his back. The rejection was not immediate, but the agonizing silence that followed was a festering wound. Later that night, Roland summoned her to the stone chambers of the Alpha's keep. Bronwyn arrived with a pounding heart, foolishly believing he had only hidden his reaction to protect her from the pack's judgment. Instead, she found him standing by a roaring hearth, swirling a chalice of wine. Beside him sat Lady Isolde. Isolde was a vision of ruthless nobility from the wealthy Crimson Valley pack. She was draped in velvet the color of freshly spilled blood, her pale skin flawless, her smile as sharp as a silvered blade. She was everything Bronwyn was not, powerful, rich, and politically advantageous. "You feel it, don't you, little weed-picker?" Isolde purred, her gaze raking over Bronwyn's mud-spattered boots. "The pull, the pathetic, whining desperation of your inner wolf begging for him." Bronwyn ignored the noblewoman, looking desperately at Roland. "Roland, the goddess chose us. I am your mate." "You are an anchor," Roland spat, his voice devoid of warmth. "Silverbridge is on the brink of war with the Western Territories. I need armies, Bronwyn. I need gold. I need a queen who commands respect, not one who smells of compost and peasant stew." The words struck her like physical blows. The mate bond, still fragile and unconsummated, flared with a burning agony in her chest. "I cannot reject the bond outright without crippling my own strength," Roland continued, stepping closer, his imposing figure casting a dark shadow over her. "So here is my decree. I will mate with Isolde. She will bear my mark and wear the crown. You will remain in Silverbridge. I have secured a small, hidden cottage at the edge of the territory for you. You will be my secret, my concubine to satisfy the beast's urges when the moon is high. Do this, and you will never go hungry again. A mistress, a dirty secret kept in the shadows, while another woman paraded as his equal. Bronwyn's hands curled into fists until her nails pierced her palms. The sheer audacity, the sickening entitlement of it, burned away her tears. "I would rather die," she whispered, her voice trembling not with sorrow, but with rage. "I reject you, Roland. I reject you as my alpha, and I reject you as my mate." Roland's eyes flashed with furious, golden light. He lunged, grabbing her by the throat and slamming her against the cold stone wall. The beast within him roared at the threat of rejection, even as his human mind craved the political power Isolde offered. "You belong to me," he snarled, his fangs elongating. "You do not have the power to reject me. You will do as I say, or I will make your life a living hell." He threw her to the floor. Isolde merely laughed, tossing a gold coin that clattered against Bronwyn's bruised knee. "Buy yourself a prettier dress for when my husband visits your hovel, peasant." The agony of the severed bond began the next morning. Without mutual acceptance, the magical tether between mates decays, turning into a rot that slowly poisons the weaker wolf. Bronwyn coughed up black blood into her wooden basin, her skin pale and clammy. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the terror that arrived at her door that evening. It was not Roland who came, but Captain Garrick, Isolde's personal enforcer. Bronwyn had been gathering her meager belongings, intending to slip away into the southern human lands, when she overheard Garrick speaking to his men outside her window. "Make it look like a rogue attack," Garrick commanded, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "Lady Isolde wants the peasant's heart in a box. As long as the girl draws breath, the alpha will be distracted. Once she is dead, the bond breaks cleanly, and he belongs fully to the Crimson Valley." Panic, cold and sharp, flooded Bronwyn's veins. Roland wasn't going to protect her. He had likely turned a blind eye to Isolde's murderous plot to rid himself of the inconvenience. With no time to pack food or warm furs, Bronwyn slipped through the loose floorboards of her shack and vanished into the freezing, rain-swept night. She couldn't go south. Garrick's hounds would expect that. The human lands were heavily patrolled by Crimson Valley borders. There was only one direction left, a direction considered tantamount to suicide: the northern wastes. Beyond the howling woods lay a territory unmapped by civilized packs. It was a brutal, glaciated nightmare known as the Jagged Peaks, ruled by the Blood Ice Pack. They were monsters of myth, enormous wolves who walked through blizzards unbothered, led by the savage Winter King, Tauren. Stories said Tauren was more beast than man, a towering warlord who kept the skulls of trespassing alphas as drinking goblets. But a swift death in the jaws of a monster was better than having her heart cut out by Isolde's lapdogs. Bronwyn ran. For 3 days and 3 nights, she pushed her failing body through the dense, unforgiving wilderness. The autumn rain turned to sleet, and the sleet turned to a blinding, relentless snowstorm. Her leather boots cracked, her toes turning black from frostbite. Every breath felt like inhaling shattered glass. Behind her, the echoing bays of Garrick's tracking hounds grew closer. They were relentless, fueled by Isolde's promise of gold. On the 4th day, Bronwyn crossed the invisible boundary into Tauren's lands. The temperature plummeted so drastically that the trees themselves seemed to groan and shatter under the weight of the ice. She collapsed at the base of a frozen waterfall, her energy entirely spent. The mate rot in her chest had spread, leaving her vision swimming with dark spots. "There she is!" a voice barked through the howling wind. Bronwyn weakly turned her head. Garrick emerged from the whiteout, flanked by 6 massive, snarling warriors. They drew their silver-coated blades, stepping over the deep snow with predatory grace. "A valiant effort, little peasant," Garrick sneered, kicking a spray of snow into her face. "But Lady Isolde sends her regards." He raised his broadsword, preparing to bring it down on her neck. Bronwyn closed her eyes, ready to embrace the dark. But the blow never landed. A sound, deeper and more terrifying than thunder, vibrated through the earth. It was a roar that seemed to freeze the very air in their lungs. Suddenly, a massive shadow launched from the cliffs above. A wolf, nearly the size of a warhorse, slammed into Garrick. The snow erupted in a geyser of red as the beast crushed the captain's armor and his chest with a single devastating bite. Garrick's men screamed, scrambling back, but they were surrounded. From the blizzard emerged a dozen more monstrous wolves. Their fur was thick and stark white, blending perfectly with the deadly landscape, their eyes glowing like glacial ice. They descended on the Silverbridge warriors with brutal mechanical efficiency. It was a massacre. Within seconds, the snow was painted crimson, and silence reclaimed the frozen wasteland. Bronwyn lay paralyzed, watching the giant wolf who had killed Garrick slowly transform. Bones cracked and reformed as the beast shifted into a man. Torin, the Winter King. He was breathtakingly terrifying. Standing well over 6.5 feet tall, his body was a canvas of thick muscle and pale, scarred skin that seemed impervious to the sub-zero cold. Long, raven-black hair whipped violently around a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. A jagged scar ran from his temple down to his jaw, a testament to his violent reign. He did not reach for clothing. He walked naked through the blizzard toward her, entirely unaffected by the lethal cold. He stopped at her feet, staring down at her with eyes the color of a winter sky. Bronwyn trembled, coughing violently, more black blood staining her lips. She waited for him to finish the job Garrick had started. Instead, Torin crouched. He leaned in close, his nose brushing her neck, where the faint, dying scent of Roland's mark lay. A deep, feral growl rumbled in Torin's chest, vibrating through the ground. He smelled the rejection. He smelled the tragedy of the broken bond. But as he inhaled, Torin froze. His icy eyes widened infinitesimally. He leaned in closer, inhaling the natural scent hidden beneath the blood and dirt. The scent of rain-soaked earth and wild yarrow. To Bronwyn's absolute shock, the savage Winter King gently scooped her broken body into his massive arms. A rejected mate, left to die in my snow. Torin's voice was a deep, gravelly baritone that commanded the storm itself. He looked down into her fading amber eyes, a possessive, dangerous fire igniting in his own. Silverbridge threw away a diamond to keep a stone. You belong to the winter now, little bird, and I let nothing of mine die. The fever dreams were a torment of fear and shadow. For days, Bronwyn hovered in the suffocating space between life and death, her spirit tethered to the mortal realm only by a thread of stubborn defiance and the strange, overwhelming presence of pine and crushed frost. The horrific rot of the severed mate bond had eaten deeply into her soul, poisoning her veins with the dark rejection of Alpha Roland. Yet, Whenever the agonizing phantom pain flared in her chest, a massive, cool hand would press against her sternum, flooding her system with an icy, numbing magic that pushed the darkness back. When Bronwyn finally forced her heavy eyelids open, she expected to see the grim, rain-leaking planks of her hovel in Silverbridge, or perhaps the dark dirt of a grave. Instead, her amber eyes adjusted to the warm, dancing light of a massive hearth fire. She was lying on a sprawling bed, draped in the thickest, softest pelts of snow bear and dire wolf. The chamber around her was cavernous, carved directly into the living, glittering blue ice of the mountain, yet it was surprisingly warm. Intricate tapestries depicting legendary battles and celestial wolf deities hung against the crystalline walls, dispelling the rumors of the Blood Ice Pack's supposed mindless savagery. "You fought a brutal war within yourself, little bird," a deep, resonant voice echoed from the corner of the room. Bronwyn stiffened, her breath catching as she turned her head. Torin, the Winter King, sat in a high-backed wooden chair, carving a piece of pale driftwood with a silver hunting knife. In the flickering firelight, he looked less like a monster and more like a rugged, battle-hardened god. He wore simple dark leather trousers and a thick woolen tunic that stretched tight across his broad shoulders, leaving the jagged scar on his neck exposed. You brought me here," Bronwyn whispered, her throat dry and raw. "Why? The legends say you slaughter any southerner who crosses the jagged peaks. Lord Reginald of the Riverlands, Sir Percival of the Vale, you killed them all." Torin paused his carving, his piercing, glacial eyes lifting to meet hers. "Lord Reginald was a slaver who hunted Omega children for sport. Sir Percival attempted to burn my border villages to steal our diamond mines. I do not kill for pleasure, Bronwyn. I kill to protect what is mine. The South paints me as a savage because I refuse to bow to their corrupt politics." He stood, moving with a silent, predatory grace that belied his massive size, and approached the bed. He poured a goblet of clear water from a crystal pitcher and handed it to her. His fingers briefly brushed hers, and a sudden electric shock zipped up Bronwyn's arm, making her gasp. Torin's eyes darkened, the pupils dilating into obsidian pools. "Drink. You have lost much blood, and the mate rot nearly took your heart." "How am I alive?" Bronwyn asked after drinking deeply, the water soothing her parched throat. "Roland's rejection. It was killing me. The bond was breaking." "The bond is broken," Torin corrected, his voice a low, soothing rumble. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his immense weight. "But the moon goddess is not as cruel as your former alpha. When a fated bond is violently rejected by a true mate who chooses ambition over destiny, the goddess occasionally grants a rare gift to the wronged party. A second chance, a true resonance." Bronwyn stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The scent of him, rain-soaked pine, sharp winter air, and rich, dark earth, was suddenly overwhelming, not terrifying, but profoundly comforting. "A second chance?" "When I found you in the snow, bleeding and waiting for the executioner's blade, my inner beast did not see a trespassing peasant," Torin murmured, leaning closer. The raw, primal intensity in his gaze made Bronwyn shiver, but not from fear. It saw its mate. "My soul recognized yours, Bronwyn. You are my destined queen, the true mate of the Winter King." Tears welled in Bronwyn's eyes, a chaotic mixture of disbelief, lingering grief, and a sudden, terrifying surge of hope. "But I am an Omega, a poor herbalist. Roland said I was a dirt-stained peasant, unworthy of a crown." A terrifying snarl erupted from Torin's chest, the sound vibrating through the ice walls. "Roland is a blind, arrogant fool who understands nothing of true power," Torin growled fiercely. He reached out, his large, calloused hand gently cupping her pale cheek. His thumb brushed away a fallen tear. "You survived the freezing wastes. You survived a severed bond. You carry the ancient knowledge of the earth in your mind, and the fire of a survivor in your spirit. To the Blood Ice Pack, strength is not measured in gold coins or noble titles. It is measured in resilience. You are more worthy of a crown than any pampered, silk-draped noblewoman." Over the next few weeks, Bronwyn recovered, her body flourishing under Torin's fierce protection and the pure, untainted magic of the northern mountains. She discovered that Torin's fortress, Frosthold, was a place of deep loyalty and harsh but fair justice. The Blood Ice wolves respected her, not because she shared Torin's bed, but because she spent her days in the healing wards, teaching their shamans southern herbalism and saving the lives of pups afflicted with winter fever. The bond between Bronwyn and Torin blossomed into a profound, consuming passion. Unlike Roland, who demanded subservience, Torin demanded her equal partnership. They ran together beneath the aurora borealis, their giant wolf forms, his an enormous, stark white beast, hers a sleek, agile russet wolf, dancing under the painted skies. For the first time in her life, Bronwyn felt entirely seen, completely safe, and fiercely loved. But the past is a relentless hunter, and it was tracking them through the snow. One bitterly cold morning, as Bronwyn stood on the high balconies of Frosthold, wrapped in Torin's thick furs, a scout rode furiously through the fortress gates. The wolf shifted back to a man, his breath pluming in the freezing air as he fell to one knee before the Winter King. "My king," the scout gasped, his eyes wide with urgency. "An army marches on the southern pass. 3,000 heavily armored warriors. Silverbridge and Crimson Valley banners fly together. Alpha Roland leads them. He comes demanding the return of his stolen property and seeks vengeance for the death of Captain Garrick." Torin's jaw clenched, his eyes hardening into twin shards of absolute deadly ice. He turned to Bronwyn, expecting to see fear. Instead, he saw the amber fire of a queen ready to protect her home. "He did not come for me," Bronwyn said, her voice steady and cold. "He came to cover up Isolde's treason. If I am alive, the Southern Councils will learn they tried to murder an innocent to break a sacred bond. Roland is marching to his death." The Howling Pass was a narrow, treacherous gorge, flanked by sheer cliffs of black stone and deadly, jagged ice. It was the only viable entrance into the northern territories for a massive army, and it was where the Winter King chose to make his stand. Roland's army was a glittering sea of polished steel, crimson cloaks, and silver weaponry. They marched with the arrogant confidence of a superior force, their war drums echoing ominously through the canyon. At the vanguard rode Alpha Roland, clad in heavy, gold-trimmed armor, a massive broadsword strapped to his back. Beside him rode Lady Isolde upon a midnight black stallion, her lips curved into a smug, victorious smile. She believed Torin would simply hand over the peasant girl to avoid a slaughter. They halted their march when they saw the blockade. Standing alone in the center of the narrow pass was Torin. He wore no heavy armor, only his dark leathers and a cloak of magnificent white fur. He held a massive double-bladed battle-axe resting casually over his broad shoulder. "Savage of the North!" Roland bellowed, urging his horse forward slightly. "You harbor a fugitive of Silverbridge. You slaughtered my captain, and you have stolen what belongs to my pack. Surrender the peasant, Bronwyn, and perhaps I will let you live to rule your frozen wasteland." Torin did not move. He simply stared at Roland with a look of absolute chilling pity. "You speak of property, Southerner. I speak of my queen, and you have marched into a graveyard." "Your queen?" Isolde laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that echoed off the cliff faces. "A mud-stained Omega is your queen? How pathetic. Men, prepare the archers. We will mount the savage's head on a spike and feed the girl to the hounds." Before the archers could even nock their arrows, the sky seemed to split open with a terrifying, ancient howl. From the high ridges above, hundreds of massive white-furred wolves materialized from the snow itself. They had been there all along, perfectly camouflaged, completely silent, waiting for the trap to close. The Blood Ice Pack did not fight in rigid, foolish formations. They fought like the avalanche, unstoppable, devastating, and absolute. But it was the figure that stepped out from the shadows of the cliff face, standing beside Torin, that made Roland's blood run entirely cold. It was Bronwyn. She was no longer the ragged, terrified girl he had thrown against a stone wall. She was clad in magnificent armor, forged of darkened northern steel and deep blue dragon glass. Her wild chestnut hair was braided with silver beads, and she wore a crown of jagged, crystallized ice upon her brow. Her amber eyes burned with a furious, majestic power that radiated across the battlefield, projecting an aura of dominance so intense that Roland's frontline warriors physically took a step back. The broken bond was entirely gone, replaced by the overwhelming, intoxicating scent of the true Winter Queen. "Bronwyn," Roland breathed, shock and a sudden violent pang of regret hitting him like a physical blow. He realized in that split second the magnitude of his mistake. She was magnificent. She was powerful. She was a true queen, and he had thrown her away for a snake. "You come seeking justice, Roland of Silverbridge?" Bronwyn's voice carried over the wind, magically amplified by the ancient magic of the northern mountains. "Let us speak of justice. Let us speak of a supposed noble alpha who stood by while his new mate sent assassins to murder an innocent girl in the dead of night to secure a political alliance." Murmurs erupted violently among Roland's own men. The Silverbridge warriors looked at their alpha, and then at Lady Isolde. Murdering an innocent to sever a moon-given bond was the highest heresy punishable by death. "Lies!" Isolde shrieked, her beautiful face twisting into an ugly, desperate snarl. "She is a witch! She lies! Attack them, Roland! Kill them all!" But Roland hesitated, his eyes locked on Bronwyn's radiant, unforgiving face. That hesitation cost him everything. "Blood for the winter!" Torin roared, raising his battle-axe high. The avalanche descended. The blood-ice wolves poured down the cliff sides like a tidal wave of fury and fang. The clash was deafening. Silverbridge steel shattered against the dense, frozen bones of the northern wolves. The southern army, trained for open-field skirmishes, was completely unprepared for the brutal, chaotic savagery of winter warfare. They were trapped in the gorge, slaughtered by an enemy that moved faster than the eye could track. Torin carved a bloody path straight through the vanguard, his battle-axe singing a deadly song as he made a beeline directly for Roland. "You discarded a diamond for a venomous viper, boy," Torin bellowed, leaping into the air and bringing his axe down with catastrophic force. Roland drew his broadsword, blocking the strike just in time, but the sheer, monstrous impact sent him flying off his horse. He crashed into the bloody snow, his armor denting under the pressure. Roland shifted, bursting out of his armor in a spray of flying steel, transforming into a massive dark grey wolf. He lunged at Torin, snapping his jaws toward the Winter King's throat. Torin dropped his axe and shifted mid-air. The two alphas collided in a horrific tangle of fur, fangs, and blood. But it was not a battle. It was an execution. Torin was larger, older, and fueled by the righteous fury of a true mate protecting his equal. Within moments, Torin had the grey wolf pinned beneath his massive paws, his jaws clamped securely around Roland's throat, applying just enough pressure to promise instant death. The battlefield fell deathly silent as the Silverbridge warriors dropped their weapons, surrendering to the overwhelming northern force. Isolde, seeing her army decimated and her husband defeated, spurred her stallion, attempting to flee back down the pass like a coward. "No," Bronwyn said quietly. She raised her hand, her amber eyes flashing with the ancient, terrifying magic she had unlocked through her bond with the Winter King and the harsh, unforgiving land. The temperature in the pass plummeted instantly. A massive, jagged spike of solid blue ice erupted violently from the ground, directly in the path of Isolde's fleeing horse. The stallion reared in terror, throwing Isolde violently into a snowbank. Before the noblewoman could scramble to her feet, Bronwyn was there. A silver blade pressed firmly against Isolde's throat. "You called me a dirt-stained peasant, Lady Isolde," Bronwyn whispered, looking down at the shivering, terrified woman whose velvet dress was now ruined by mud and blood. "You thought power was inherited through gold and bloodlines. You were wrong. True power is surviving the storm and learning how to control the lightning." "Please," Isolde sobbed, her arrogance entirely shattered. "Mercy, show me mercy." "Mercy is a southern weakness," Bronwyn replied coldly. "But I am the Winter Queen." Bronwyn did not kill her. Death would be too quick an end for a traitor. Instead, Bronwyn commanded the Blood Ice warriors to strip Isolde of her noble cloaks and her silver jewelry. She was banished into the endless, frozen wastes of the deep north with nothing but a ragged woolen tunic, cursed to wander as a nameless rogue until the ice claimed her for good. As for Roland, Torin allowed him to live, but only after forcing him to submit publicly before the entire surviving army. The dark grey wolf whimpered, pressing his belly to the blood-stained snow, completely broken and utterly humiliated. Roland was sent back to Silverbridge not as a proud alpha, but as a defeated, disgraced ruler who had lost half his army, his noble bride, and his true, destined mate. He would live the rest of his miserable days haunted by the magnificent, untouchable queen he had foolishly thrown away. Bronwyn stood atop the highest ridge of the Howling Pass, looking out over the conquered valley. Torin approached from behind, wrapping his massive arms around her waist, his chin resting gently on the crown of her head. He breathed in her scent, entirely at peace. "The South will never look at the North the same way again," Torin murmured, pressing a warm kiss to her cold temple. Bronwyn leaned back against his solid chest, her heart full, her spirit unbreakable. "Let them look. Let them fear the ice. For we are the storm, my king, and we will never be broken again." What an epic tale of betrayal, survival, and absolute vengeance. Bronwyn proved that true power does not come from noble bloodlines, but from a fiercely resilient spirit. She rose from a discarded, heartbroken peasant to the untouchable Winter Queen, showing Alpha Roland exactly what he threw away. If you loved this thrilling medieval werewolf romance drama and its satisfying twists, please hit that like button, share this story with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible audio stories.